The Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. Chapter 70. Can you believe we have only 10 chapters left? Wild for Hold.
Azkaban? Lucius Malfoy?
Ron reacted about how Hermione expected he would, sputtering in outrage and repeating himself. It was only natural, she thought, trying to be patient as she explained her plans. Yes, Lucius was an evil kid. Yes, he plotted against Muggleborns from Azkaban. Yes, Astoria Greengrass was a walking nightmare who deserved to choke in those bloody diamonds. And yes, once Astoria was free of the necklace, she'd probably murdered a lot of them. Malfoys, Muggleborns, and all.
She's alone, I'll tell you,
Ron said hoarsely, convinced that Hermione had enough horrid stories about Astoria. She'd see sense, and they'd spend the day at the Three Broomsticks instead.
George told me about that inter-house Quidditch match. He said Greengrass nearly killed her own chaser with a broom.
She just beat him around the head a few times. He's fine, Hermione said. She checked her watch as they continued along the tunnel. They needed to quicken their steps if she was going to be back by dinner.
I still say if anyone needs to be collared, it's Astoria Greengrass,
Ron went on stubbornly as he followed.
She gave me the creeps. Narcissa Malfoy did all of us a favour, really, and you want to free the bint?
Narcissa didn't do Draco a favour, Hermione said, Astoria's hiding behind furniture and pouncing on him. Well, that delayed things a bit further because Ron practically fell on the tunnel floor laughing. Hermione had to drag him by the arm to keep him moving, which gave her ample time to regret not sneaking off alone. Ron sobered once they left the passageway and stood in Honeyduke's cellars preparing to apparate. He still couldn't believe Hermione planned to interview the worst dark wizard alive to help some Bellatrix in training.
Be reasonable, Mai,
he begged, a hand on the wand she'd raised to apparate them.
If you're looking to help people, let's find someone who deserves it. You're always talking about taking soup to Nocturne Alley. We could do that today, or we could free some house elves.
Ron beamed suddenly.
Oh, I know. We could make a list of all the reasons Gawain Roberts is an idiot and shouldn't be Minister of Magic and pass out whoopies in Diagon Alley. You'd like that, wouldn't you? You could lecture people all day long.
That would be a lovely day with you, Ron, Hermione admitted. But I promised Astoria. Draco and I can't have any future with her baying after him like a rabid bloodhound. Ron just shook his head. He obviously didn't see any future ahead for her and Draco, Astoria or no. But he quit trying to tempt her with social justice campaigns and released her wand. It will be fine, you'll see, Hermione said, taking his arm. It will be a nice seaside outing. The Azkaban pier looked anything but inviting on that November day. Hermione and Ron apparated to a windswept rocky beach just down the waterfront and climbed the wooden steps to the deserted boardwalk. It was barely noon, but fog was already swirling in from the North Sea, giving the scene a twilight feel. A weak sun glared behind thick clouds. Hermione had last been there with Kingsley just a day after the Battle of Hogwarts to welcome the innocent Muggleborns newly released from Azkaban. The isolated island fortress could be accessed only by ship. No apparating, no owls. Not even a Patronus was possible. On that May afternoon the sun had been bright, the boardwalk's iron railings were hung with flowery garlands, and cheering friends and relatives of the released prisoners swarmed the waterfront. This time the scene was bleak. The Azkaban's pier's only function was to ferry criminals, staff and visitors to the rocky island. Hermione once again thought of Narcissa, making this journey twice a month to see Lucius. And to cast dangerous spells aimed at Muggleborns, Hermione thought, her jaw hardening. And to trap young women in diamond collars.
Blimey, Hermione,
Ron said, looking around. He pulled his heavy cloak closer.
I can still feel those Dementors.
He was right, she realized. Dementors had patrolled this boardwalk for so long that the fog felt heavy with their presence. This will never work. Astoria will never be free. Draco won't ever come back to me. Go to Azkaban and sit alone in a cell, eventually hunched and aged, reading a book by candlelight with only shreds of memories remaining of a single night years before, trying to cling to.
Let's go,
Ron said suddenly. He grabbed Hermione's hand, pulling her along as he strode toward the pier's iron gates.
I'm not staying here all day. Nice seaside outing my ass.
Hermione choked back a sob, and suddenly she was very grateful for Ron. He wasn't the most imaginative bloke, and that could only be an advantage when loitering around dementor-tainted infrastructure. Draco would have been quickly overcome. She wondered how Harry managed this place.
We are here to visit someone,
Ron was telling the blue-cloaked guards at the iron gate.
I'm Ron Weasley, you know.
The guards ignored him.
Hermione Granger?
Ron tried. The guards looked at each other, then nodded as the gates opened.
Come on,
Ron said grumpily, leading the way. They walked down the pier, their shoes loud on the wooden planks.
How do you know they'll even let you see? Blimey!
Ron broke off, his eyes wide. Hermione froze as well. On the other side of a weather-beaten guardhouse, an enormous black galleon was tied to the pier with silvery ropes, rocking on the sea swells. Back in May, the Ministry had released magical balloons when the released prisoners arrived, blocking a clear view of the Azkaban ship. Now Hermione could see why. The galleon's hull, ringing, and sails were the same inky colour, and the ship rocked precariously in the icy wind off the Scottish coast. Its sails were ragged and torn. The hull splintered and broken, wood encrusted with salt. The ship looked ready to fall apart and sink at any minute. It also looked deserted, narrow gangplank leading from their pier to its black depth. Silver lettering on the bow spelled out, Sharon.
We are not boarding that,
Ron declared. We certainly are. Hermione strode forward and almost fell into the North Sea as the rickety gangplank wobbled, and only due to Ron's Quidditch reflexes, blunt but effective, he could keep her out of the drink. His long arm shot out and pulled her against him.
Watch it, Hermione! Merlin!
Ron hauled her along the gangplank, his arm like iron, and led her into the Sharon's red-lit opening. The heavy door slammed shut behind them, and Hermione and Ron looked around a surprisingly large room. A blood-red lamp swayed from the ceiling, and the walls were lined with glowing iron chains bolted to the walls. There was still nobody inside. The ship sail itself. Was it sentient? What was the MSA thinking, sending people on a haunted ghost ship? Hermione followed Ron up a wooden flight of stairs to the galleon's main deck, also deserted. As soon as their feet touched the deck, the Sharon shuddered, its silvery rope springing free of the pier and curling onto the deck. Hermione and Ron dodged the writhing ropes and clung to the railings as the ship rose and fell into the North Sea swell.
We're headed for that whirlpool,
Ron shouted just as the Sharon reached the edge of a frothy swell and the entire ship began to spin. Hermione just shut her eyes and clung to Ron's waist for dear life until the spinning stopped and the Sharon jerked wildly, apparently trying to shake off its two passengers. Before them loomed a wild black island, rising from the choppy sea like a giant witch's head.
Azkaban,
Ron said hoarsely, if unnecessary. The Sharon rocked towards the island, white stone dock. Tied to the dock was another galleon, this one considerably less ominous. Its hull and sails were silvery grey, its rigging and banner bright blue. Witches and wizards formed a line as blue-robed guards helped each passenger aboard. Hermione could see neat benches on the main deck, and servers circulating among the passengers selling refreshments. She groaned.
"What?" Ron asked.
He was still staring up at the prison fortress and hadn't noticed the other galleon.
"Are you all right?"
"We took the wrong ship," Hermione said, pointing. "Look, that's the ship for visitors." Ron rounded on her. He looked affrighted, utterly soaked, and blue with cold, hair plastered in his eyes.
"You put us on a prisoner's ship?"
"How was I supposed to know?" Hermione retorted. She clambered down the wooden steps to the room with the glowing chains, then pushed open the door.
"That's it,"
Ron snapped, following her along the gangplank.
"We're not doing this, we're going."
"No, I have to see Lucius."
"Lucius?"
asked the voice. "Lucius Malfoy?" asked the voice. Hermione and Ron had reached the white marble dock, and both turned to see a tiny plump witch, pink hair, and blue robe smiling up at them. She looked like a sugar-spun Celeste Rosier. "You're here to see Lucius Malfoy?" Yes," Hermione said nervously. Well, that's lovely, the witch clapped. He doesn't get many visitors, you know. Just his wife, usually. So sad. Visitors are vital to healing. Are you his quill pals? Ron turned purple at the very idea of being quill pals with Lucius Malfoy, but Hermione nodded gamely. We share an interest in ancient runes. Hermione Granger, the witch cried. This is truly an honor. Ron huffed under his breath. And Ronald Weasley. I'm Nurse Minnie, Azkaban's Director of Healing Services. My, you're both soaked to the skin. You should have waited for our new friendship. Isn't she lovely? Lovely, Hermione said. And the Sharon. The witch looked a bit embarrassed. Yes, I'm afraid we are still using the old Azkaban ship for the prisoners. The friendship ran a bit over budget. I'm afraid no money for a new prisoner ship until next year. Hermione frowned. That is unacceptable, she said. What kind of healing could prisoners expect after taking that voyage of the damned? Have you begun fundraising campaign, a petition? Surely. Hermione, Ron groaned. Can we please dry off and warm up before you start up another sodding course? But Ron! Your friend is right, Miss Granger. Nurse Minnie piped up. You can't appear before Mr. Malfoy looking like that. Hermione rolled her eyes at the very idea of primping for Lucius Malfoy, but she let herself be ushered into the prison. The director's quick dry spell left Hermione's hair hopelessly bushy, and she only managed to force it into a ponytail with the help of the Gloriana clip. She tried to straighten the clip on top of her head, but it kept dragging down to the right. Oh well. Ron smoothed his newly dried bright orange jacket, which Hermione now noticed featured flashing purple W's. Where'd you get those diamonds? He asked her suspiciously. Draco, Hermione said shortly. Ron glowered, but said nothing. Nurse Minnie escorted him personally through a maze of corridors and stairs, always climbing higher. Azkaban was unsettlingly quiet, any footfall swallowed by the thick walls and floors. They passed endless doors, tightly shut and labelled with glowing letters. There were no windows, only hanging lamps casting a thin golden light. As they climbed the winding stone stairs to higher levels, the walls and doors became even thicker, the guards more frequent. The doors' names were now familiar. Roll, Yaxley, C, not, G, not, L, not. The trio walked on silently until they struck a landing near the top of the fortress. 4 guards stood under the tall, pointed ceiling between 3 closed, unnamed doors. Our most dangerous prisoners are kept on this level, Nurse Minnie said, pricking her fingertips and dripping a bit of blood on one of the door's lock. The name, L. Malfoy, appeared in silvery letters. Maximum security. The hint of steel crept into Nurse Minnie's voice for the first time. I have to ask you both for your wands. You understand, of course. Hermione handed over her vine wand, and after a small hesitation, Ron did the same. They also shed their heavy cloaks, leaving Hermione in her black jumper and jeans, her pink bag strapped slung across her chest. No magical items or spells can pass through the bars, the prison official said, patting them down. She opened Hermione's pink bag, which appeared to hold only a quill and a sealed inkpot. Ron's pockets yielded a bag of jelly slugs and a gilt-edged teacup. Oh, how lovely! Nurse Minnie clapped her hands. Such nice gifts! Ron goggled at the very idea of bringing gifts to Lucius Malfoy, but he recovered quickly. Yes, he said with a grin. You can give them to him after we've left. Nurse Minnie conjured up a gift box for the items and set it aside. Hermione rolled her eyes, then led Ron a few steps away. She lowered her voice. You don't have to come with me, Ron. You are not seeing him alone, Ron said mullishly. This will be delicate, and he will be unpleasant. She bit her lip. Whatever he says, you can't react. Whatever I say, you have to back me up. I understand, Ron said. You can trust me. If Lucius doesn't succeed in shaking me, he'll go after you, Hermione went on. He will say foul things about you, me, Draco, and you'll have to stand there and take it. Those are my conditions. She looked at her friend doubtfully. If all else failed, she knew a few wandless hexers. Ron took a deep breath. I know. He looked at her pleadingly. Please let me do this. Hermione took a deep breath and nodded. The die has been cast. She turned to Nurse Minnie. We're ready. Go on right through, dearies, the prison director said. I'll be right here. Have a lovely visit. Hermione pulled open the heavy door which led to a windowless room with slanted ceilings, divided in half by a row of bars. The bars glowed faintly, magically cast iron. A single straight-backed chair was placed outside, facing the bars. On the other side of the bars was a cot and a desk, and sitting in the cell's chair, facing the bars from the other side, was Lucius Malfoy. He looked surprisingly well, certainly better than he had at the Battle of Hogwarts after being beaten down and degraded under Voldemort. Lucius was the same height as Draco, with the same hair and eyes, but his frame was broader, his face more square. He wore simple grey robes, and his long platinum hair was tied back from a still handsome face with a black ribbon. Lucius held a book in one pale hand, and Hermione noted that it was D. Egbert Donaldson, Unravelling the Elder Fool Box.
Miss Granger,
Lucius said, as if he barely remembered who she was. He ignored Ron, who stood silently a little back. Mr. Malfoy, Hermione said, emphasizing that Mr. just a tad.
I understand I have you to thank for this intriguing volume.
Lucius tilted his head slightly and looked at her with hooded eyes. A mere suggestion, Hermione said, matching his tone. The chapter on musical runes is particularly interesting.
Really?
Lucius raised an eyebrow.
I confess I found Donaldson's interpretation rather emotional.
The songs were gorgeous. Some emotion was to be expected, Hermione said calmly. My personal theory is that musical runes responded to the heart of the witch or wizard touching them.
Romantic frippery,
Lucius said, bored. I don't believe so. Hermione warmed to the topic. Witches and wizards in those times didn't tap runes with wands. They brushed them with their fingers. They played those runes like paper pianos. Is it any wonder that magic responded to their emotions? Lucius' look of boredom didn't waver.
I doubt you travelled here to debate the Elder Fool Box, Miss Granger.
His eyes met hers briefly.
Do have a seat.
Hermione had planned to stand, but if Lucius wanted to play this as a social occasion, she'd go along. At least Ron was keeping quiet.
I assume this is the paternal visit?
Lucius' tone gave the last 3 words a significant meaning, and Hermione almost groaned. Another bloody courtship milestone she hadn't known about. By the shuffling of feet behind her, Ron likely knew what Lucius meant. No, sir, she said. I'm not planning a marriage with Draco at this time. More shuffling behind her. Ron had obviously caught the hedge in the statement. Lucius did as well. The prisoner eyed the Gloriana clips sticking crookly out of her ponytail.
I never saw you as a witch to be one with baubles,
Lucius said. I didn't think you saw me as a witch at all. Lucius waved a hand.
Let us not bandy semantics.
Like you faint, Hermione said without thinking. Lucius' eyes narrowed.
Why are you here, Miss Granger? Surely you don't expect me to discuss the unfortunate spell on Hogwarts?
Certainly not, Mr. Malfoy, she said. I'm here to talk about the diamonds. It was impressive, really, how a man sitting behind prison bars could still look down his nose at her.
Very well, he said. We could discuss, perhaps, the shocking lack of breeding displayed when one parades a family-stolen treasure in public.
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite clear. Hermione sounded anything but apologetic. I'm here to discuss your wife's diamond. Now Astoria Greengrass diamonds. Silence. Lucius stared at her without expression.
Ah, yes, Le Chien d'Etoiles, he said finally. The chain of stars. A Malfoy necklace of uncommon rarity, bestowed upon a worthy witch.
I can only be grateful I didn't merit such a gift, Hermione said. I like to think I'm worth more than a slave's collar. Lucius rose to his feet, looming behind the bars. Hermione remained seated, praying Ron would stay where he was. The look on the former Malfoy's lord's face was cold fury.
"You," he hissed, "you defy my only heir, flaunt our jewels, and insult my wife. You will pay for—"
Hermione saw a shadow move to the left. "No, Ron," she said sharply. "Ah, yes. Your blood traitor lapdog," Lucius said, finally deigning to notice Ron. "He's used to taking the leavings of his betters, of course." "I loved Ron when your son was still mired in evil and hate," Hermione said calmly. "Draco will never be his better, but his behavior this year has made him perhaps Ron's equal."
"Mudblood whore,"
Lucius snarled.
"Get out! Get out!"
His hands clutched the bars, which flung him backwards, leaving thick red wheals on his skin. Hermione stood. "We still haven't discussed Astoria's diamonds," she said stubbornly. "Narcissa presented this chain of stars to her, and since Astoria cannot remove the necklace, she's permanently under Narcissa's control, and therefore yours." Lucius' eyes, so like Draco's, suddenly turned cold. He stepped closer to the bars, an evil smile touching his lips.
"Draco will thank me one day,"
he said softly.
"One day my son will retrieve la chaîne de trois and clasp it once more around Miss Granger's lovely throat. And then—"
The wizard's smile widened.
"Draco will be able to enjoy its full advantages."
His words dripped with suggestion, and Hermione had to call up the frozen pond on Pluto to keep from flushing. Ron gave a low growl at Lucius' tone. Been amazingly controlled, but she'd better move this along. "You're taking quite the risk here, Mr. Malfoy," Hermione said. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps Draco will leave me and take up with Astoria again, enticed by a lifetime of submissive sex." The discussions with Astoria had turned out to be good training for this conversation. She retook her seat, ignoring Ron's shocked gasp. "But I think you're quite wrong." Hermione crossed her legs and put her clasped hands on her knees, the very picture she hoped of calm. "Draco has no interest in Astoria anymore, and will likely marry someone else. It doesn't have to be me, in which case that necklace will be lost forever, and he won't care." She smiled. "Draco doesn't need to choke a woman to get what he wants." Lucius' face was cold stone.
"He will return to her,"
he said through gritted teeth. "Merlin, he even sounds like Astoria." "Are you willing to bet your diamonds on it?" she asked. "You've already lost the Gloriana set. Will you allow another heirloom to slip through your fingers?" Hermione let that question sink in for a moment. She was a great believer in letting people think. Lucius took his own seat again and sipped his tea from a dented metal cup, prolonging the moment, just watching her.
"What do you propose, Miss Granger?"
he asked as if he couldn't care less. "Tell me how to free Astoria from the necklace. You must know how. Allow her to return it to the family." Lucius froze.
"You've already said that Draco wouldn't use it, Miss Granger."
Hermione looked him straight in the eyes. "Maybe his heirs won't be so dainty." Another silence fell, this one so thick and charged that Hermione could hardly breathe. She sat watching Lucius, counting the seconds as he stared at her, cup in hand, like he'd never seen her before. She had no idea what was going through his mind. Ron was utterly still behind her. She assumed he would have heard a thud if he'd fainted in shock. Hermione counted 2 minutes, and was ready to faint from the tension herself, when Lucius finally emerged from his frozen state. He set down his cup and leaned back. His face wore a side smile, and when he spoke he sounded amused.
"I almost regret your blood status, Miss Granger," he said.
Hermione blinked. That sounded like a compliment, in a racist sort of way.
Very well, he said. You have me convinced. It would be in the Malfoy's best interest to release Miss Greengrass. She is apparently unworthy after all. Bloody hell,
Ron said behind her.
Indeed,
Lucius said, all cordiality. He stretched out a long arm to pluck quill and paper from his desk, then wrote a short note. The parchment rolled up into a tight scroll, and Lucius slid it between the bars to roll on the floor at Hermione's feet. She eyed it in amazement, then picked up the scroll.
Do read it,
Lucius said carelessly.
It is simply an instruction to Miss Greengrass to remove the necklace.
That's it, Hermione asked, looking down at the scroll in her hand. That's all that's required.
You were a bit mistaken, Miss Granger.
Lucius looked smug.
But then I don't expect one such as yourself to understand the nuances of magical jewellery. Narcissa did give Miss Greengrass the necklace, and the girl did follow orders. But those orders were mine. Dear Narcissa merely delivered my words.
He took a sip of his tea.
The wording was precise. My wife told Miss Greengrass she was passing on her own interest gift, and she did it in a way to keep the necklace under my control. Narcissa said, Lucius would be honored if you would wear this, dear.
The wizard imitated his wife's nifty tone perfectly.
Lucius would prefer if you didn't take it off. Lucius would like it if you showed Draco where his true interests lie, and please don't give up.
Hermione's eyes narrowed.
If you control the necklace, that means you.
Lucius' smirk widened into a smile.
Yes. Sweet little Astoria Greengrass is not bound to my wife, nor to Draco. She is bound to me. I regret that present circumstances prevent me from taking full advantage of that fact.
Bile rose in Hermione's throat, and she swallowed it down. As much as she loathed Astoria, the very idea of the blonde under Lucius' power made her sick with dread.
You recoil, Miss Granger,
the wizard said darkly.
Do keep in mind my son is no less possessive.
Hermione shifted in her seat. Whatever was coming, she wasn't going to like it.
I speak, of course, of the diamonds you now wear,
Dark Wizard continued,
and the set's motto.
Hermione blinked. Borgen hadn't said anything about a motto.
Draco didn't tell you. Intriguing.
Lucius' eyes glittered.
Tap the box with your wand, and these words will appear. Noli me tangere. Surely the brightest witch of her age knows her Latin.
Noli me tangere, Hermione repeated. Touch me not.
Well done, Miss Granger.
Lucius continued, purring over her name, playing the role of the superior instructor.
And perhaps you can tell me the famous poem that contains the phrase?
Hermione struggled silently, her hatred of Lucius warring with the urge to prove her knowledge of 16th century Muggle poetry. The latter prevailed, of course. She stood, and in a voice that seemed not her own she recited, "Engraven with diamonds in letters plain, there is written her fair neck round about. Noli me tangere, for Caesar's I am, and wild for to hold, though I seem tame."
"That is correct,"
Lucius said, a teacher praising a rather dim pupil.
"The first Lucius Malfoy commissioned goblins to create the Gloriana set in the 1500s as an interest gift for the Queen."
Hermione had heard the rumours surrounding Lucius I and the first Queen Elizabeth, who apparently rejected both his proposal and his diamonds. It was said that an angry Lucius had cursed the queen to never marry, but the set had apparently retained the motto, which quoted a love poem written to the queen's mother.
Noli me tangere,
Lucius repeated, a strange light in those grey eyes that held hers.
Tell me, Miss Granger. Are you also wild for hold, though you seem tame?
Hermione flinched, stepping back and knocking the chair over behind her. She had to move forward and pick it up, and it felt a light touch on her back, a silent question. She clutched Lucius' scroll to her chest, but when she spoke, her voice was cool. "Thank you for speaking with me, sir," Hermione said. "I won't take up any more of your time." Lucius remained seated, an obvious knight.
Your visit was a pleasure, Miss Granger, he said. I see now Draco's long fascination.
He shrugged.
Strange. I thought I'd beaten a touch of him.
Hermione's fist clenched around her scroll, but she concentrated on Ron's hand still on her back. Calm. It won't do to set a chair on fire.
Oh, well.
Lucius gave her a hooded look that reminded her of Draco.
I can't help but think perhaps I gave La Chaîne d'Étoiles to the wrong witch. Lost opportunities.
He smiled thinly.
Think of me, Miss Granger, sometimes. Or better yet, visit again. Alone.
That silky voice caressed the last word, sending a shiver up Hermione's spine. If another velvet box had turned up in her bedroom and she tried on that necklace out of curiosity. Ron had finally had enough.
You son of a...
Hermione flung out an arm and felt her friend collide against it, but mercifully Ron halted and said no more. I pity you, Lucius, she said quietly. A single Dementor remains in Azkaban, and I'm looking at him. I will think of you here, all alone, shriveling into a wrath-like shadow of lust and hate, rattling your chains. Looking at you, I see the process has already begun. Lucius' eyes flashed, but he said nothing, and Hermione turned to meet Ron's shocked eyes. Now she just needed to get out of this room before she or Ron fainted, or both. Ron hurried to open the door, and it took every ounce of self-control for Hermione not to rush through it. She counted her steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there was Nurse Minnie, jumping up from her chair with a smile. The heavy door swung shut behind them. My, you were in there for a time, Nurse Minnie said brightly. Did you have a nice visit? Ron turned to Hermione.
Oh, I don't care if we have to take the death ship. We're getting the hell out of here, he said. Holy fuck,
Ron was repeating under his breath.
Holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck.
He and Hermione were on the deck of the Friendship, slamming fire whiskey, a gift from another Azkaban visitor.
Rough visit, eh?
The bluff wizard had asked, handing them this flask. She and Ron had boarded the galleon, undoubtedly looking more dead than alive.
You two need this more than I do.
Then he thanked them for defeating Voldemort and returned to his wife. Hermione and Ron huddled on the bow, wrapped in their cloaks and passing the flask between them. The Friendship didn't use the whirlpool, so the ride was longer but smoother. Hermione had her hood up and she leaned against Ron's shoulder. Ron took another swig.
Holy fuck,
he said one last time.
Oh, I can't decide who was more scary, him or you.
Definitely him, Hermione said. She still trembled like a leaf.
Those diamonds he was talking about,
Ron swallowed.
They're really the ones you're wearing?
Yes, Hermione said. Ron had earned some answers today. A diamond clip and 2 pins named the Gloriana set. The jewels cut any man who touches them, except for Draco. Ron was silent, but his body stiffened, as did the arm around her.
Hermione?
He took a deep breath.
Hermione, I'm trying to be supportive here, but do you really want to be part of that world?
I'm not joining their world, Hermione said. I'm trying to get them to join ours."
"Well, fucking luck with that,"
Ron said. He took another big gulp from the flask, then grinned. "What?" Hermione asked, looking up at him. She didn't see anything to grin about.
"I was thinking of my gifts to Malfoy Sr., Ron said. "I hope he likes the nose-biting teacup."
To be continued. Next up. Yes, Draco is displeased again and takes extreme measures to find out what happened with his father. Thank you for listening to this chapter of the Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.